I'm Maia Carroll.
And I'm Steve McShane.
It's all about the best in this edition of Begin in the Garden.
Growing the best flowers and the best vegetables here in Monterey County.
Then we're going to take a trip back in time to a garden circa 1865. Now wait, you don't have to break out the warp speed or anything. This time traveling you can do in the car.
All coming up next.
This next half hour, we'll be counting down some of the most popular garden items on the Central Coast. Best fruits, best vegetables, best landscape plants. In our first list, we'll take a look at the most popular shade plants. Which is your favorite?
Speaking of shade, begonias love shade and cooler weather.
It's no wonder then that our area boasts a blooming begonia farm.
This ranch here in Marina is where we grow the tuberous begonias, which are behind me, and they do very well in this climate like we have today with the nice foggy weather that Marina typically has this time of year. That was started by my great-grandfather in 1909 or 1910. They started growing strawberries and some other bulb crops like freesia, and got into the begonias in the mid-late teens after he'd taken a trip to Belgium where they have grown begonias for many years, and came back with some of the seed, and along with some other growers in the Capitola, Live Oak area of Santa Cruz, started producing the begonia plants there in Capitola. So I'm fourth generation, and there's a couple younger nephews that are fifth generation that'll be entering the business in the next couple years as well. We not only grow the bulbs, which are actually tubers, we also breed new varieties and introduce those into the market. We start from seed. All these plants back here are grown from seed, and we grow them through the spring, through the summer, and harvest them in December. Our bulbs are tubers, in this case the tubers. The begonias are shipped all over the United States, and some are exported, but primarily in the U.S. We sell wholesale or sell to wholesale distributors. We sell to mail order catalog distributors. We'll sell to bulb brokers who in turn resell it to other nurseries to grow that tuber into a finished plant for the next year. There's a number of different colors and types. There is the solid color forms that come in every color except blue, both a ruffled and a rose form shape. There's hanging basket types and solid color forms. There's also we call the two-tone or picoty types, which will have a solid color with the petals fringed with another color. So there'll be two colors. And in some of those varieties, because they are more recently hybridized, they have less vigor, and so they're a little more difficult to grow, but they are spectacular once you can complete and finish the job. Monterey County is a great place to grow the begonias. On the coast, They'll do very well in almost any location. If they're in pots or containers, you just want a nice draining media to grow them in. High in organic matter is preferable, although here in the field we grow in a very sandy soil, so you can do it many different ways. If you plant them in your garden at home, you want to make sure it's a good draining soil. A sandy soil drains well. A clay soil will be more difficult. You could have problems with the bulbs developing a soft rot because of the lack of drainage. If you're not on the coast, if you're in the inland parts of Monterey County, then you need to make sure to stay out of the heat and out of the bright sun. They don't like full sun. They like this lovely fog condition or oak tree or something to be underneath that will allow partial sun but a fair amount of shade. So inland in Monterey County where it warms up, you want to be on the north side of your building or under a nice oak tree, and there they should do pretty well. It's hard for me, I guess, to picture myself doing other types of work. It's we not only farm about 35 acres of begonias, but we do farm nearly 900 acres of other bulb crops throughout Monterey and Santa Cruz County. So it's a very keeps you very busy, very active, but outdoors a lot, and I enjoy that type of work.
Wow, begonia flowers are beautiful, but are they on our next list? Coming up, the most popular cutting plants on the Central Coast.
In our garden showcase, a rags to riches story, or maybe a dirt and nothing to dazzling with something quite a bit more, as we look at Supervisor Jane Parker's garden and what she's done to begin producing her own flowers and vegetables.
Hi, I'm Jane Parker, and I want to welcome you to my garden. It's a small garden, but I am very proud of it because when I moved into this house in 2001, this whole area in the back of the house was dirt. I'm not really a gardener, so it was a little intimidating to start with such a blank slate, but I talked to some friends of mine who are more gardener types, and they had several suggestions that I really incorporated. The primary goal first was to have things that would grow up quickly so that I would have a view of plants rather than my neighbor's roofs. The second principle was that anything that went into this garden should either be edible or produce something that's edible or be fragrant. So if we start here, we have a perfect example. This is a Cecil Bruner rose bush that started out fairly small. It's pretty enthusiastic, as you can see, and we have to keep it trimmed back. In fact, unfortunately, it's not blooming at the moment, but you can see that it's very happy. And then right here is a rosemary plant. I have some rosemary out in front as well because I like not only to use it in cooking, but I like to brush up against it as I'm walking by, because then it releases some of the smells and makes my clothes smell good. Then I actually put in a couple of planter boxes to put herbs in. And right now I have marjoram that is going delightfully to seed. It's very enthusiastic here, and the other herbs that I put in were more temperamental and really didn't work. I'm not that attentive a gardener, so if you need a lot of attention, you're really not going to make it in my garden. So it's really the ones who just you can turn them loose and they're happy pretty much on their own. So marjoram seems to be a winner. Moving along here, we have, again, a very enthusiastic lemon bush. I use it's a Myers lemon, so it has that very sweet lemon juice, and I use the rind quite a bit as well in cooking. I have two potato vines, one that has the purple and one that is white, and in between here is jasmine, which definitely qualifies in the good smelling category. So in this part of the garden we have this lovely plant that I believe is I want to call it a Mexican sage or Mexican oregano. The leaves are very fragrant if you squeeze them, and of course the blossoms you can see are fairly exuberant, which is a good thing. It's a small garden, and it is something, as I say, I'm very proud of, because this really there was nothing here. And for someone who's not a gardener to actually have something that is this pleasing and this healthy and that produces so many yummy things for me, I'm really, really pleased. And I'm pleased to have had you along to take a look at it.
Mix thousands of flowers and a lot of eager float builders, and you have a weekend of fun every year.
Well, forget the Rose Parade. We have a begonia festival to celebrate.
Oh, it's just a lot of fun. People might, all you got to do is sign up. It's free. You do have to give a $100 deposit, but if you come back to clean up, you get your money back. So just get a group of friends together, sign up with the Capitola Begonia Festival, and they're always looking for people to come out here and build floats. You got to go pick the flowers. It's in Marina, is where we pick the flowers, and you do that in the morning. Then you come out in the afternoon, you stuff the float, and it's just a lot of fun. It's a good way to camaraderie with friends. How about that?
We are doing When Pigs Fly, and so as you can see, we're doing all pink this year. We have pink themes, and we will be wearing scarves and pilot-like attire while we're sitting in a pig floating down the river. Basically, there is no bad flower because we're trying to go for quantity, not quality necessarily, so you pick as many as you can. We find that a lot of the other competitors out there don't pick as many flowers, and so they end up with needing to borrow some at the end. But really, it's just the fullest, largest flower that will have the most coverage on the float is what you're going after. So you may look at this and not all of them are that quality. However, when you're looking at a float in such distance, it really doesn't matter. So anything that has kind of enough of a fullness about it and is decent sized is what we go after. The technique to picking, let's find a decent one here, is literally just to go from underneath and just pull. You don't even need the stem, evidently. And so just you go after anyone you find. The ones that are facing down, actually, when you turn them over, they surprise you. I find that I get the best ones. See, look at that. When they're facing down.
We do this every year. It's Cal Poly Alumni Association. And this year was a flying theme, and all the good flying things were taken, like airplanes, balloons, zeppelins, anything you can imagine that flies. So we said, well, what's left, And thought around, well, what about When Pigs Fly? So that's our float. It's When Pigs Fly. That's our theme. And as you can see, it's coming along well right now. Oh, it'll float. There's going to be like 15 people on this barge. And see, the logic with this float is this is an ugly barge. We want this thing actually to sink to water level, so we get as many people on this barge as possible, so we don't have to flower any of it. It's just right at water level. And Then it's just the pig is standing from there up, will be floating, skimming along the surface of the water, and we're all going to be inside. It's like a big basket, and just having a great time with thousands of people watching us.
We're using the Southern California twisting pole where we put the wire through. She pulls it from the other side. Does the it's on the wrist. You do a slight like a jerky motion around it, tie it, cinch it in real tight.
We are working on our pig, and flowers are getting covered pretty much all across the entire float. And the beauty is that we are having plenty of volunteers stop and want to participate. So we're recruiting all ages, frankly, and they're all helping us. We're offering Cal Poly stickers for anyone who supports. And we're pretty much doing what was already described, shoving wonderful little wire through the center of the begonia and attaching it like so. And we're already doing very well. I'm not sure what time it is, but we've got major coverage already.
Once the begonia floats are ready, all the boats hit the water for a yearly event that's really fun to watch.
Most gardens start small, about the size of a seed. Beth Benjamin from Renee's Seeds has some tips for us on how to get your garden off to the right start.
Choose carefully the seeds that you're going to start with. And you know, there's starting seeds directly in the ground, and then there's starting seeds in containers. The seeds that have to be started in containers in our area are ones that you want to have a good sized plant to go out in order to ripen fruit in the summer-fall season, but they can't go outside until it gets warm. So that category, you've got tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, some flowers. And tomatoes are sort of the one that we care more about, I think, than anything else, and are really easy to start from seed. They germinate fast, but they need it warm. You can buy seed starting mix, which is probably the best thing for a beginner. Containers that have enough bulk in it. 4-inch pots are nice. You can use the little jumbo 6-packs or 6-packs. Make sure it's moist before you start, because then it's hard to water dry soil. It should be like a moist wrung out sponge so it holds together in a clump, but so it's not mucky and soggy. Fill your containers up to the top, tap them down a little bit. They're always going to sink as you water them. So I like to fill them, tap them down, and then level off the top. And then say it's a tomato, say you've got a 4-inch pot that you're starting tomato seeds. You could put 5 or 6 seeds in there. The general rule for starting seeds is cover them twice the thickness of the seed. So if it's a big bean seed, you know, you're going to go down to the first knuckle. If it's a teeny seed, you're going to want to actually almost just dust the top so you can't see the seed anymore. So usually if you cover the seed so you can't see it anymore, that's probably thick enough. Big problem often with people is they cover too thickly. Other big problem is they let the seed thing dry out, and it's hard to moisten it up once it's dry. It is so fun once you learn how to do it, and if you're interested in starting seeds, it's good to put a little energy into making yourself a little place to do it. Have a little potting bench, have the soil there. Don't think of it as just something that you do one time of the year and that's it, it's over. You know, if you fail, try again. You know, I'm not being an advertisement for Renee's Garden, but we have really good horticultural advice on the website. Most seeds come up within 7 to 10 days. It'll almost always say on the packet what you should expect. Call the company right away, because they'll almost always send you new seeds if you did something wrong. They're not going to ask you questions about how bad you were. They want you to have success with your seeds. I don't think you save much money growing your own vegetables. I just think it's a really wonderful occupation and thing to be part of. I think there's nothing as wonderful as starting your plants from seeds. I'm a big fan of seed starting. I love it. And people are being more adventuresome.
Now that you know the best way to start your garden from scratch, let's take a look at some of the most popular crops grown in Monterey County.
You'll find a vintage garden gem in Monterey at Cooper-Molera State Park.
Volunteers are giving the world a glimpse of a garden from 1865. Let's go take a look.
We are in the vegetable garden of the Cooper-Molera Garden here in Monterey Historic Park. This garden was recreated to showcase plants that would have been in the garden of John Cooper and his wife Encarnacion in 1865. So everything you see here they would recognize if they came back. The value of the garden is, number one, just the history of the garden, knowing what things looked like back then and knowing that that these things still exist in our gardens and we can still cultivate them. Another value is of keeping these old plants alive, or these historic plants alive, is the value of the genetic material that they contain. Because in hybridizing vegetables and flowers that we've done over the years, lots of times valuable genetic properties have been lost. So this is a repository, if you will, of that some of that genetic material. Well, as you look around the garden, you'll notice there are a lot of flowers in the garden, not just what we would call vegetable plants. And the reason for that is to attract the beneficial insects that would keep down the populations of the harmful insects that would normally inhabit your garden. We do have onions, tomatoes and squash, beans, grapes, more flowers, the sweet peas that actually I believe came from Mount Vernon. The seeds were bought specifically to be planted in this garden because they're historically accurate. So here we have those sweet peas I was talking about, which will be going to seed soon. And let's see if we have any seed pods here on them. These will be collected and sold in packets in the volunteers. Well, the volunteers actually put them together in packets, and they're sold in the visitor center if you're interested, if anyone is interested. A lot of research has been done by the volunteers here to make that determination which plants are truly representative of that time period. We are in a portion of the Cooper-Molera garden that we refer to as the Victorian garden. It has several roses in it. Smells lovely when they're all in bloom. These roses all would have existed at the time that John and Encarnacion Cooper were living here. They've all been researched to show that they are from that time period or even farther back. I believe that it was a way that John had of showing his wife how much he loved him by bringing him roses from his travels. He was a sea captain, was familiar with many of the sea captains that came to the area, so I believe that they all brought specimens from their travels to John and Encarnacion. This orchard is an assemblage of trees that John and Encarnacion would have enjoyed in their garden when they lived here. It represents not only newly planted trees, which were researched to show that they actually existed at that time period, but also some of the trees were planted by their grandson and still exist today. Mission fig and a peach, there's 4 kinds of apples, a couple of apricots, one of which, or maybe both of which, actually came from another historic garden. There's almonds, and there's plums, and there's grapes. Plus you'll see flowers growing throughout the garden, or throughout the orchard, which is typical of that time, we like to think. And again, the flowers are there to attract the beneficial insects, to keep the bugs out of the trees.
Thanks for joining us
on this edition of Begin in the Garden.